Hello everybody, you're watching Landshark News, Landmark College's most trusted broadcast news source. I'm George Crosby.
And I'm Nico Zachman. And if you don't need a therapist after our A block, then you've got problems. We got everything from mass grave desecration to bomb threats and Oscar mix-ups. But first, let's start with the Middle East.
Slowly but surely, the fight against ISIS is being won. Turkish-backed Syrian rebels known as the Free Syrian Army liberated the town of Al-Bab on February 26th from the nefarious terrorist organization. With the aid of both Russia and American forces, Free Syrian Army troops emerged victorious in the fight against the Islamic State. The Syrian government forces and the Syrian Democratic Forces, a multi-ethnic group of militias strongly condemned by Turkey, captured the territory to the south and east of Al-Bab.
Hundreds of refugee Rohingya Muslims returned home to Myanmar from their camps in Bangladesh. Mostly young men, they have journeyed to fetch family members they have not heard from in months. Over 400,000 Rohingya, a minority in the predominantly Buddhist nation, fled to Bangladesh following a crackdown by the Myanmar military, of which the UN says may amount to crimes against humanity. Refugees fleeing this crisis report cases of rape, torture, murder, and the destruction of towns and villages. Aung San Suu Kyi, Nobel Peace Prize winner and leader of the Myanmar government, has remained quiet on the situation, with the refugees in question not planning a permanent return home anytime soon.
Back in the United States, the people of certain states are divided about Trump's recent travel ban against 7 predominantly Muslim countries. The Texas state government became the first state to support it. However, Washington and Minnesota came out against. Michigan was clearly divided, with some parts of the state for and some parts against the ban. This is despite the fact Trump won Michigan's electoral votes. Similarly, national polls indicate mixed support for the ban, with 31 of those polled feeling safer, while 26% less safe, and 33 not affected. In addition, reports show the ban could affect colleges by keeping potentially talented and capable students from attending. Trump claims he will revise the travel ban, but early indications reveal that not much will change. News stories say that Trump has rejected intelligence from Homeland Security because it does not support his theory about the ban. The ban currently lies in limbo with the courts.
In a related story, Henry Rousseau, a prominent historian and scholar from France, was recently detained in a Texas airport for over 10 hours. He came from Paris to give a speech at Texas's A&M University. Rousseau is Egyptian-born. A&M brought in renowned immigration expert Professor Fatma Marouf for legal evidence in the case. Marouf has already voiced opposition against Trump's ban. Marouf was able to help Rousseau, and the speech went on. This travel ban is not an official law as of now.
A draft for the repeal for the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, was leaked recently, revealing some controversial changes, to say the least, to be put in effect between now and 2020. A primary aspect of the potential bill is that the tax credits would be distributed based on age instead of access to Obamacare income subsidies. For example, a person under the age of 30 would be provided $2,000. People over the age of 60 would be allotted $4,000 to help with health care. The bill would call for $100 billion to be distributed in state innovation grants to retool their individual healthcare systems. The draft bill also removes funding from Planned Parenthood, specifically preventing them from any Medicaid reimbursements for about a year, and would only allow for abortions in cases of danger to the mother's health and incest.
Across the nation, communities are being forced to fight an escalating battle against opioid-based drugs. And while heroin may be the best-known illicit member of this family, it is actually the legal prescription painkillers like OxyContin and Vicodin that are causing the biggest problems. In 2014, there were approximately 47,000 reported overdose deaths, 62% due to opioids. Opioid prescriptions skyrocketed from the late 90s through the 2000s until, at its peak in 2012, there were 282 million prescriptions written, and it's estimated that as many as 4 out of 5 heroin users started with prescription painkillers. This problem is also close to home. James Bach reports to us from across the river in New Hampshire.
Thank you, Nico. One of the states hardest hit by the ongoing opioid abuse crisis is New Hampshire. The Granite State has seen a rise in deaths from overdoses rise from 24th in the nation 10 years ago to 3rd in the nation today, with only Delaware having a more dramatic increase. Last year, the governor's State of the State speech had a large portion dedicated to addressing the crisis. The deputy DEA administrator, Jack Riley, called New Hampshire ground zero for the nation's battle against the epidemic. Now back to the desk.
Thanks, James. Moving on to cultural news, let's learn from the latest from Hollywood.
It's that time of the year again, Oscar season. On February 26th, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences held its 89th edition of the Oscars. Many tremendous films won awards. At the awards ceremony, the film La La Land was expected to win Best Picture, and it did, for about 5 minutes. When the presenters announced La La Land as the winner, the cast flooded the stage to give their various thank yous. But then it was noticed that the note card for Best Picture actually read the film Moonlight. The cast of that film rushed to the stage as the real winners. It was an awkward moment, shocking to hosts, casts, and viewing audiences alike. This is the first time a major blunder like this has occurred for the Oscars. Nevertheless, this year's Oscars were notable for other reasons.
That's right, Nico. For the first time in several years, there was widespread diversity amongst the Academy Award-winning nominees. For the first time, a Muslim actor collected a statue. Mahershala Ali won for the Best Actor in a Supporting Role for the poignant movie Moonlight, which centered on the struggles of a black man's coming of age. Ali's win is even more compelling after his controversial acceptance speech at the Screen Actors Guild Awards earlier this year. He said, "What I learned from working on Moonlight is that this is what happens when we persecute people. They fold into themselves." A comment directed towards today's political climate. Besides Ali's triumph, this year's Oscars had the highest diversity rate ever for people of color at an impressive 41%.
In January, President Trump overturned former President Obama's decision to halt construction on the Dakota Access Pipeline. The Dakota Access Pipeline would transport crude oil from North Dakota to Illinois, traveling through land sacred to the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, sparking protests by Native American environmental activists. A previously proposed route would have gone through Bismarck, North Dakota, but was rejected due to concerns about land and water contamination. There have been some legal challenges to the order so far, but for now, construction remains on schedule. Trump's decision has led to other types of protests about the pipeline.
New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio is in the news again. Apparently, he's starting to cut the city's banking ties to Wells Fargo for their investment in the Dakota Access Pipeline. De Blasio claimed that the pipeline would violate human and tribal rights per Standing Rock Indians Reservation and would pollute the land and water. New York City would be the third city to do so, following Seattle and Davis City, California, and more plan to follow suit. There are rumors that Wells Fargo's hometown, San Francisco, is planning on voting to cut ties as well.
Besides the pipeline protests, there are other signs that political and religious tensions are rising in the United States. Over the past month, almost 100 Jewish community centers spanning 33 states have received bomb threats. So far, all of the threats turned out to be false alarms. However, related vandalism is on the rise. In Pennsylvania and Missouri, Jewish cemeteries have had graves desecrated and gravestones overturned. Federal and state governments have launched investigations into what appear to be anti-Semitic hate crimes. Now we turn to developments in our local southern Vermont area. Let's hear from Andrew in Putney.
In the early evening on February 27th, a two-alarm fire broke out on Pierce Road in Putney, Vermont. Putney firefighters were on the scene in minutes. With the help of crews from Dummerston, Brattleboro, Westminster, Bellows Falls, Vernon, and Spofford and Walpole, New Hampshire, the fire was under control within an hour. No one was home when the fire began, but a neighbor on Putney Falls Road said there's believed to be 2 cats, a dog, and a large snake in the house. The cats were rescued and are recovering well. The status of the dog and snake are unknown at this time. The cause of the fire is being investigated by the Putney Fire Department, the Vermont State Police, and the Vermont Division of Fire Safety. No foul play suspected this time. Now back to the desk.
I really hope that they're all okay.
As an animal lover, I sure hope the dog and the snake are okay.
I agree. In other news, tragedy struck once again for a local landmark. Mike brings us the story.
The Putney General Store, which opened in the 1790s, has had its fair share of trials and tribulations in recent years. A fire in 2008, which is generally believed to have been an arson, burned some of the store down. A lapsed lease in 2013, and most recently, the store's most recent owner, Jim Hale, unfortunately passed away after losing the fight to cancer on December 30th, 2016. The store's newest owner, the Putney Historical Society, is struggling to hold on to the store due to a high-rate mortgage, but hopes to formulate a plan to reopen at some point in the future.
Thanks, Mike. I hope that they're doing well and hope we'll be open soon.
Yeah, I mean, where else am I supposed to get my stuff without having to go to Brattleboro or Keene?
Same. With springtime upon us, the annual changes come to the world of sports. Here's one for example.
That's right, George. The biggest NCAA tournament, nicknamed March Madness, begins soon. In March Madness, the top 64 colleges or universities for basketball square off until there is 2 teams left in the final round. The projected favorites year in and year out are Duke, Kansas, and Kentucky. Oregon recently climbed the ranks, and everyone is expecting a top 5 finish for them. March Madness begins on March 14th and ends with the finals on April 3rd. Now let's go to the baseball diamonds of Arizona to hear from James.
For those of you in cold Vermont, this may be hard to believe, but baseball is right around the corner. Opening day is less than a month away, on April 2nd. Teams are in both warm Arizona and Florida getting ready for the season. Exhibition games are already underway. Last year, the Cubs snapped their 108-year World Series drought, and Westlake Las Vegas Superbooks, who sets betting odds, has them as a 3-1 favorite to repeat, followed by the Red Sox and Dodgers at 10-1 to win the World Series. But as any ball player knows, a new season means a clean slate. Speaking of baseball, if you have a PS3 or 4, you've probably heard of MLB The Show, the series. Andrew Derby has more.
MLB 16 is the most recently released one for the series. The basic mini games carry over from previous years, such as Road to the Show, also known as My Career Mode, and Franchise Mode. But in MLB 16, the minigame Diamond Dynasty returns from an absence, as well as tons of new other online features. Diamond Dynasty is an online duel versus other users where you assemble your team by opening player packs or using in-game currency stubs to purchase players. A lot of fans are looking forward to the comeback of Diamond Dynasty, as am I.
After a crash-filled 2017 Daytona 500 that eliminated half the field, Kurt Busch won the race on its 59th running. Busch won the race in grand fashion, making a last-lap pass to take his first lead of the race and get his first win at the Daytona 500. Prior to this win, Busch had 5 top 5 finishes and 2 second-place finishes. This is also the first win at the Daytona 500 for owner Tony Stewart.
Moving on from sports, a bill has been passed by the New Hampshire House that would end daylight savings time for the state. Yes, supporters of the bill, HB 209, argue that traffic incidents spike when the clocks spring forward. Opponents have expressed concern over children waiting for school buses in the dark, and how that change would affect towns across the border of New Hampshire and Vermont. New Hampshire's other neighbor, Massachusetts, has been considering dropping daylight savings since last year. Frequent commuter traffic between the two states has motivated New Hampshire to propose the same switch. No decision is expected until July.
Human volunteers say the number of whales beached on the coast of New Zealand. On New Zealand's Golden Bay on February 18, 2017, nearly 700 pilot whales have mysteriously washed ashore. Almost half of them died, but many were saved by volunteers. The volunteers did their best at rescuing many whales by using 2 phases. One was moving the whales near the shore back into the water and creating a human chain to prevent them from coming back. The other was for whales who are further away from land. The volunteers would cover the whales with cloths, except for their blowholes, and throw buckets of water until high tide. Then the volunteers could push the whales back into the water. Some people believe that the reason why the whales went ashore as they were chased by predators, or they were looking for food. Nevertheless, this still proves that humans can still help the environment in many ways.
Speaking of New Zealand, Zealandia may sound like the name of a theme park, but geologists are calling it an 8th continent. New Zealand geologist Nick Mortimer argues that Zealandia, being more than 90% underwater, its size and elevation above the ocean floor meets the definition of a continent. Zealandia spans more than 2 million square miles across the Southwest Pacific. Many in the geological community already consider Zealandia a continent, and Mortimer says that the last step to make Zealandia a continent is to make its way into popular culture and onto maps.
A number of Earth-like planets have been discovered, and they're right on our doorstep. TRAPPIST-1, a dwarf star, is only 39 light-years away, and its 7 planets exist in what's called the Goldilocks zone. Those are conditions where scientists believe life can be found. Not too cold, not too hot, and just right for liquid water. The discovery has led NASA astrophysicist Thomas Zurbuchen to declare, "Finding a second Earth is not just a matter of if, but when." NASA's Spitzer-Hubble and Kepler telescopes will next determine whether these planets have atmospheres.
In our final story, recent efforts have been made by former white supremacists to help others leave hate groups. Shannon Martinez and Christian Percoli, two former white supremacist skinheads, founded an organization called Love After Hate in 2009, which is dedicated to helping people who may have second thoughts about joining hate groups and organizations. The work of Martinez and Piccoli allotted them $400,000 in grants by the Justice Department under the Obama administration. Unfortunately, Love After Hate might be facing some rough times ahead. The funding granted to them may be endangered by the budget cuts of the Trump administration and shifted into a military budget to combat Islamic terrorism.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Shark Time News. I'm Nico Zachman.
And I'm George Crosby. And remember, sharks don't have ears, but we do. That's camera 3. Yeah. I'm fake.
There we go. Perfect. I look good.
So let's make sure that.
I mean, real good.
Here at the White House, we have learned that Donald Trump...
You just got pranked, son.
I'm back.
I've never heard of that.
I'll tell you later.
What are you, CNN?
Meow.
How about we're starting now?
Let's go.
Whatever you want
Go.
to do.
Go.
Let's go. This counts.
I am not sure if this thing is on, by the way.
The co-anchor and the co-anchor. I am the mega anchor.
Sorry.
Hi, Mom! Hi, Mom! I made it!